All right, we are just about ready to go. All right, and we're back. Hello and welcome back to Developers Day. I'm here with Selwyn Ravens and Bob Moore. We're going to be talking about what we've been doing in Alpha Anywhere during 2024 and beyond. So I'm going to go ahead. Selwyn, are you there? You might be on mute. Hello, Selwyn, are you there? You should be a mute
Okay,
thing.
there we go. Now,
We got it. Awesome.
okay,
Terrific.
sorry about this.
No problem at all. So this is usually a very exciting part of it. So not to put any pressure on you, Selwyn, but we're really looking forward to what you have to say about the roadmap. So take it away.
Okay, so is my screen shared yet? No.
Not yet. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter. You should see a dialog box now on
Show
the
my
screen.
screen. Okay, there we go.
And
So
there
can
we
you
go.
see my screen now?
I sure can.
Okay, so Dave, thanks very much and welcome everybody to Developer Day. What I'm going to do today is we have 1.5 hours, but I have to devote half an hour of that time to Bob Moore, who's going to be talking about stuff that's coming up on PWAs. So in my presentation, what I'd like to do is cover what we added in 2024 and what's on our roadmap for 2025. So I'm going to start out with what we did in 2024 and then move on to the roadmap. And basically, so what we have here is a slide presentation. So let me just see if I can move. So in 2024, we had hundreds of new features that were added to Alpha Anywhere, and they were across 5 major releases. And the themes of the releases were, most of all, we did a lot of work on the list control. So what we found is that among our developers, the list control is probably the single most important control in Alpha Anywhere. It's used by most developers. So the list control is one of the features in the UX builder, and we've added a lot of new features to the list control, and we have a lot of new features in the list control scheduled for upcoming releases that I'll be demoing later on today. So what we've done in the list control is, first of all, we've added a fast setup feature, and that's the ability to create a list control really quickly without having to go through all the prompts that you normally have to go through, and I'll demo that in a few seconds. We've also added the ability to create a lookup list while you're doing data entry into a list that has in-place editing. So normally with in-place editing, you can define a control to be an edit combo or a lookup control or a drop-down controls, etc. But now what you can do is you can define another list as this data source for a lookup. And we're also going to talk about custom lookups. So a custom lookup is a lookup where you define your own controls. So for example, in a custom lookup, you might have a field whose value is going to be set by moving a slider control. So I'll be demoing that as well. Then we've added Firestore as a data source for the list. So for those of you who are not familiar with Firestore, Firestore is a database that is made by Google. And the big advantage of Firestore is that it's a real-time database, which means that when you make an edit to a Firestore database, all of the list controls that are linked to that data source will be updated automatically, which is really nice. Then I'll be demoing that as well. So we've also added support for MongoDB as a data source, and we've added support for Amazon S3 buckets, AWS bucket S3 buckets as a data source. We've added the ability to display images in a list control from a private S3 bucket. So when you upload images to an S3 bucket, you can specify that the S3 bucket is either public or private. So private S3 buckets require the URL that you use to display the image to be signed, and Alpha will do that. Then we've also added concepts called named queries, which allows you to create complex queries and just assign them different names. And then the user at runtime can apply the query by just clicking on the name of the query. And then finally, we've added custom icons into column titles in the list. And each custom icon that you add can have an event associated with it. So you, for example, could create little icons in the title, say the first name column. And then when you click on those icons, a JavaScript event will take place. So on the UX component itself, we've added some timing ability to display timing information. So one of the things that we found is that sometimes developers report to us that their app is running a little bit slow. And so in order to track down why it's slow, we've added the ability to time how long an AJAX callback takes. And we've also added the ability to time how long a list control takes to refresh. Then to improve performance of UX components, we've added the ability to create static HTML versions of your UX. And then when you open up a UX using Action JavaScript, you can now specify that you want to open up the static HTML version of that component. And the net result of that is that you're going to get much faster performance opening up the component. And I'll demo that as well. And then we've added a new sample component, which is a generic SQL table editor. And the reason that we did this is because we've noticed that in many applications, developers need to add some code for an administrator to edit data in several different tables. And rather than having the developer develop a grid for each of the tables that they need to update, they can use the generic SQL table editor. And that's one of the sample UXs that is included with Alpha. So then we've also continued to add features to JSON forms. So we've added free form containers, which is something that exists in regular UX components. So a free form container is just a container where you can create arbitrary HTML with placeholders for the JSON form controls. So that allows you to create very customized JSON form layouts. We've added CSS grid containers, which again is something that we have in the regular UX. But the reason that CSS grid is so powerful is that it lets you create a grid and place your controls in the grid automatically. So for example, if you want to have a JSON form where you have a field that is left justified and then another field that is right justified and stays right justified as you increase the size or change the size of the form, that's where CSS grid is very useful. We've added support for placeholders, which are watermarks. We've added support for radio button groups. So radio button groups are radio buttons that are populated with a data source. So for example, you could do a SQL query to get a list of choices from a SQL database, and you could use that to populate your radio button. Same thing with checkbox groups. We've also added the ability to create individual radio buttons. So for example, you might have a situation where you've got, say, 2 radio buttons, married or single, and you'd like to place them in different places on the JSON form. So using individual radio buttons, one for the married choice and one for the single choice, would be useful. We've added the ability to style the choices in an edit combo and auto suggest and radio and checkbox groups. We've added in control buttons, which are little buttons that you can create and place inside edit controls. So this is very similar to what exists in the regular UX component. And we've also added support for data-driven forms, which are JSON forms that are dynamically generated on the fly from data that's in a database. So what that lets you do is, for example, just go to your database, add a new row, and then all of a sudden the form that the user sees on their screen will have a new field in it. So I'll be demoing data-driven forms a little later. We've added something called lightweight lists, which is a new control type that is much faster and much easier and quicker to set up than a list control itself. We've done quite a bit of work on the security framework. So we've added a new version of the login component that supports login with Cognito, also login with Firebase. And we've added the ability to export the seed users. Those are the users that you define in your IDE. So the seed users and groups can be exported to either Cognito or Firestore. And then on two-factor authentication, we've added the ability for the user to specify trust this browser, which means that the next time that they log in from that same browser, they will not need to go through the two-factor flow. And we've also added events. And the reason that we added events was some users wanted to basically not require two-factor authentication if the user was logging in from the same IP address that they had previously logged in from, or they wanted to only require two-factor authentication every, say, 10 logins. Or so basically with events, you can write custom code that determines under which conditions two-factor login will be required or not required. So then we've added support, as I mentioned earlier, for Firestore. You can use Firestore as a list data source. We've also added a Firestore Explorer that allows you to edit the data in a Firestore database. And we've added several XBasic functions that allow you to interact with a Firestore database. And the same for MongoDB. We've added a MongoDB Explorer. We have MongoDB XBasic functions, and you can bind a list control to MongoDB. Then for mobile apps, we've made updates to the Cordova engine, to the Cordova Genie, and we've also added support for Docker for building Android builds. So previously, in order to build an Android mobile app, you needed to install the Java SDK and the Android SDK, and there were a number of prerequisites that you had to get right before you could do the Android build. And with the Docker image, everything comes pre-installed for you, so you just load the Docker image and you're good to go. So it makes building Android apps much easier than it was in the past. So on reports, one of the things we've done is we've added the ability to define a custom XBasic functions for defining calc fields. So before you had to create an AEX file and compile your XBasic functions into an AEX file in order to use them in a calc field in reports. And now when you create reports, you can just create your own XBasic functions that are used by the reports calc fields. So it's much easier to create custom calc fields in a report. We've also added in grids, we've added the ability to specify security groups for Excel export. So previously, if you turned on Excel export, it was available to all users. So now it's basically going to only be available for people who are in that security group. And we've added the ability to specify a sub-theme for different buttons that you use in your grid. We have new XBasic functions to work with MongoDB, Firestore, S3, and DynamoDB and Cognito. So for example, you might want to use an XBasic function to create an S3 bucket, or to create a Cognito user group, or to add a user to a Cognito user group. And then on PWAs, we've added the ability to send notifications, and we've also made it easier to install the PWA onto your mobile device. And Bob Moore will be demoing that a little later in this presentation. So on the classic server, we've added the ability to run the classic server as a service. So in the past, developers were using products like Always Up to run the classic server as a service, but now you don't need to use Always Up. It's built into Alpha, so you can just run the classic server as a service. And the reason that that's nice having it as a service is that if your server needs to reboot, the service will automatically start up again. And you can also use cron jobs to check to see if the memory has reached a certain level, and then you can force a reboot or a restart, sorry, of the server. And we've added document templates, which is another way of creating a report where the report definition is defined in JSON. And so document templates represent a new way of creating PDF output from data in your databases. So document templates are an alternative to reports. And the nice thing about document templates is that besides being JSON defined by JSON templates, they're also extremely fast as well. So okay, so that gets us to the end of the selected features. So let's go now and demo some of these selected features. So I'm going to go now back to Alpha. And the first thing that I'm going to look at is list control lookups. So I'm going to go here into this component here. And I'm going to run it now. And you can see if I go into edit mode, here we have a lookup for this contact name field. And when I open up this lookup, you can see that a list control is displayed there. And I'm going to go now and double click on this row, Anton, and you can see it fills in that value. So the way in which this lookup was defined was we have a list control here, which we have turned on in-place editing. So if we go back to this list, we can see that the list property has turned on in-place editing. And then what we've done is we've created a lookup list over here, which is another list control, which is going to be our data source. And this list control is based on the Northwind customer table. And we place it in a window over here. And then we also specify for speed purposes that this control is not going to be rendered until the window itself is opened. And then finally, we go back to this list over here, and we go to the Fields tab, and we go to, say, I think it was contact name that I defined the lookup for. So there's our list lookup type. So if I bring up the control settings here, you can see that we've chosen a list lookup as the type of control for this field, for the contact name field. And then what we've done is, in order to specify the features of this lookup, we've gone over here and we've said that the lookup is going to be displayed in a window that has a width of 6 inches. And the buttons in the window are going to say commit and cancel. And then next we can go back to the window, to the lookup itself, and we can see we need to specify what the name is of the window that contains the list, and then that's all. And then we also need to specify what code gets executed when the user makes a selection from the list. So in this case, since it's a list lookup, we know how to, when we edit the row and we open up the lookup, and then we double click on a row here, you'll see it writes this back into the record automatically. So that's a list lookup. And now let's go and take a look at custom lookups. So here's a custom lookup. And we can see that when we open up the lookup, instead of, we get a slider control, and we can go to the slider here and say commit on 28, and you'll see the value gets filled in automatically. So the way the slider control works is similarly, we put a window control over here, then we put a slider control inside the window, and then we go to the list itself and we define the lookup field. So we go to list properties, we've turned on allow in-place editing. And then we go to the fields tab over here, and we scroll down to say quantity, and we've defined quantity as a custom lookup. And if we go into the custom lookup definition here, we can see that we've specified that the window that should be opened is called window 1, and that when the window is opened, what we want to do is take the value that is in the row that we're editing in the list and set the slider to that value. And then when you hit the commit button, we want to take the value that's in the slider and set a result field to that value so that it gets filled into the list. So building custom lookups using either lists or your own controls is really easy in this release. And so those are features that are currently in the product already. So let's go back now and look at the Firestore Explorer and the MongoDB Explorer and the SQL data editor. So these are all different UIs that allow you to work with your Firestore database. If I bring up, say, the Firestore Explorer, so this is our connection string to Firestore. And we're using this collection. And if I connect now, this is the data in the Firestore database. So right now I'm looking at paginated data. So if I click on this row here, let's go say Bergs, and then edit this city and change this from that city there to Boston. And then if I save that value now, and then if I go to the Firestore console over here, so let's see, where's the Firestore console over there? And then we edited Bergs, and we changed the city to Boston. So you can see there's the edit has been made over there in Boston. So let's go back now to this UX. And what I'm going to do now is create a list control that uses Firestore as the data source. So I'm going to go back into the list control, back into the UX, create a new UX component here. And one thing that I mentioned is that we had created a fast way of creating lists. So if I go here and say create a new list, you'll see that there's a new option here called create from template. And if I go there, I can choose any of the templates that I've previously created. So I'm going to just not do that. I'm going to just create the list from scratch now. So I'll leave that blank, and then I'll just go and say, okay. So now I'm going to go and set my data source to Firestore. And you can see here that we also have S3 bucket and MongoDB as available data sources for the list, but I'm going to choose Firestore. And when you choose Firestore, you have the option of executing the code server side, which means that the alpha server is involved. So that means that the list will talk to the alpha server, and the alpha server will in turn talk to Firestore. But you also have the choice of setting it to client side, which means that the client side, which is the browser, will talk directly to Firestore, bypassing the alpha server. And the reason that that option is attractive is that that's how you use the real-time database. So if you choose the client side option, then immediately when someone makes a change to the database, your list control will be updated in real time to show that change. And also basically the list control can operate in an offline mode, which means that if you can't connect to the Firestore database, all the data that's in the list will be stored in a local IndexedDB database and will be displayed from there. So I'm going to basically change my execute where from the server to the client. And I'm going to go here and specify my connection string to the server, which I need because I need to be able to get the fields in the collection that I'm going to be using. So we choose that connection string, and we're going to choose this collection. And now we need to specify the client-side connection string. So these are the credentials that we have specified when we created our Firestore database. And then here are these options, track changes, which allows us to automatically see changes that someone else makes to the database, and enable persistence, which means that this database can work in disconnected mode. So I'm going to turn that off for the time being and just have track changes turned on. So now I'm going to go to my list layout and choose the columns I want in this layout. So I'll choose contact name, and then I'll choose customer company name, and I'll choose city and country. So when I go here now, let's just save this as and then run this. So you can see that there's no data. There is data there right now, but this data came because we are currently logged in. So what I'm going to do now is make some changes here so that we log out of this database. So I'm going to go here and add some controls for logging in. So I'll go here and add 2 text boxes, one called user ID and one called password. And then I'll add a button to actually do the login. So what I'm logging into is the Firestore database. So I'll go here and say login. And I'll put that button underneath those. I'll turn off the brake on those. Then I'll go to this button here, and I'll say it's a list control action. And the action that I want is log into Firebase. The list that I want to log into is this one, list 1. And the user ID control is user ID, and the password is password. And so that's my login button. And now I'm going to make a log out button. So let's go here and make another button that says log out. And we'll go now again to action JavaScript. So list control actions. And I'm going to go here and say log out to list 1. So now I'm going to go and run this component again. And I'm going to say log out. Now I'm going to run the component again. And what I'm told now is that I can't see any of the data because I don't have permission. And the reason that I don't have permission is that I'm not currently logged in. And I've also defined rules in my Firestore console. So if I go back to Firestore here and I go to authentication, go back to the database and then go to rules, you can see I've got a rule that says that we must be logged in as either user 1 or as user 3. So let's go back now to Alpha. So you can see we're not logged in right now, so we can't see the data. So I'm going to go here and type in user 1 at alpha.com, and the password is going to be So let's log in now. So now we're logged in, and if I go here and I rerun this component now, we should be logged in, so therefore we should be able to see the data. So there's the data coming up. And now the next thing that I want to demonstrate is the fact that it's a real-time database. So if I go back to Cognito here, to Firestore, sorry, I go to the database, and if I go and look at Alpha here, I can see that we have, for Anton, the contact name is Antonio Marino 3. So let's go and edit that value. So we go back to Firestore here, and we go to the Northwind customers. And so there's contact name over there. So let's edit that and change the value to get rid of the 3 there, and then just save it. So we've saved it now. Now if we go back and look at Alpha, we can see that the data has already updated immediately. So we didn't have to go and press the refresh button or anything. It just refreshed automatically because we have we have turned on the real-time features of the list control. So the list control can talk to Firestore in a using the real-time database to get immediate updates. So the next thing that I'd like to demonstrate is what we've done to the login component. So I'm going to go back to let's see, where did I put this? Over there. So here's my login component now. And if I go to properties and scroll down to the login section, you'll see that I've turned on the ability to log in with Google. I've turned on the ability to log in with Cognito and with Firebase, etc. And then for each one of these settings, you can basically double click on this button to open up the dialog where you configure the UX to use Firebase. So let's go and run this now. So what we see is the new redesigned login component that allows user ID password login. So this is the traditional way of logging in, or Google. So when you switch to Google, there's no prompt for the username because the Google user interface will just let you authorize automatically. Same thing is true for Cognito, and then for Firebase, we display the user ID and password. So you now have these additional options for logging into your application. And the reason that having Cognito and Firebase available as options, the reason that that's attractive is because when you're using security in either the Alpha Cloud or IIS, the security information is all stored in a membership provider that is part of IIS, and you can't edit those records in the database yourself. Whereas with Cognito and Firebase, you have access to the database of users, and you can edit those users yourself. So that's an advantage of Cognito and Firebase for using authentication. So the next thing that I'd like to point out is if you look at this component here in controls, you'll see that it's quite a big component. It's got a lot of controls in it. In fact, it's got 72 individual controls. So now I'm going to go back here and look at that same component created as a JSON form. So I'm going to go here. So this is the same component rendered now as a JSON form. And what we see is that if we go to controls here, there's very few controls. So we've got this JSON form here, which represents the login. So if we run this component now, we can see it looks very similar to the other component, but it's much lighter weight now. So that's one of the advantages of JSON forms, is that you can build highly complex components using much fewer controls. And because you've got fewer controls, you're going to get better performance. So the final thing that I would like to point out is how you can use static HTML to improve performance. So what I'm going to do now is create a brand new component. I'll just choose, say, a component here from the templates. And I'm going to go here and save this as UX child. And then I'm going to create a new UX component to open up this component as when the user clicks on a button. So I'll go here and I'll say new UX component. And then I'm going to add a button to this UX component. And this button is going to open up another UX. So here's our button that opens up the UX. And then I'm going to choose the child UX component over there. And now you can see that there's a new option here called Open UX using static HTML files. So I'm going to choose that. And then when I hit the Save button, it's going to say to me that your child UX doesn't currently have a HTML version. So would you like to create one? So I'll say yes. So now we've created an HTML version of the child. If we go look in the web control panel now under HTML pages, we can see there's the child UX component rendered as HTML. And if we also, furthermore, if we go back to the child there and we look at the properties of this component, we'll see that we've turned on this feature here that says every time you make a change to this component and you save it, you want to regenerate the HTML. So you can see if I double click on this, we said that every time we save this component, we will automatically create a new static HTML called the default name.html. So now I'm going to go here. I'll just save this. So when we save this now, you'll see we create the static HTML version. And now we're going to go back to this guy here and we'll run it. I'll save it. I'll call it UX parent. So unfortunately, this is not a really good demonstration because this child component here is pretty simple. So it loads quickly regardless of whether it's done as a static HTML or not. But if this was a more complex component, the difference would be quite dramatic. So you can see when I load this again now, there it is. But I'm not quite sure. Did I mess something up here? Edit. No, that's correct. So that's basically how you create the static HTML version. And this ability to open up a child component as static HTML is available not only for buttons on a UX component, but it's also available in the tab UI component. So now what I'd like to do is move on to our roadmap and talk a little bit about the roadmap. So I'm going to go back to, let's go to, close that down, and Okay, so basically for 2025, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be releasing a free threaded version of the alpha servers, both IIS and the classic server. So the free threaded version, I'll explain what that is, and I'll play this little video that demonstrates what the difference is. So normally when you're running alpha servers, XBasic is not thread safe, which means that you only are running one thread at a time when XBasic is running. But the free threaded version is thread safe, which means that you can get more throughput on your servers than you can with the non-free threaded version. So what that means is that if you have a server with multiple cores, which most servers are today, then you can very easily get improved performance. So what I'm going to do now is demonstrate that feature by running this video here. And this video demonstrates the difference between the free threaded version and the non-free threaded version. And it does that by running a script that makes many Ajax callbacks to create an image in a UX component. So let's go back over here, paste in this URL. Oops, that's not the right URL. I guess I didn't copy it correctly. So this video demonstrates the difference between the free-threaded and non-free-threaded version of.
Someone, do you want to give us a play-by-play on this one, since the audio is probably not going to
So
get
what
through?
this is showing is this is an image that is generated by making Ajax callbacks, and you can see that it took 95.8 seconds in order to complete using the non-free threaded version. So now I'm going to go forward really quickly. So you can see here it's running. This is the non-free threaded version, and oh, actually, so what we have happening over here, sorry. Yeah, so this was 94 seconds for the non-free threaded version, and now we're switching to the free threaded version over here. So you can see that the Ajax callbacks are happening much quicker now. And we'll also see that the time taken is, instead of 94 seconds, it's like okay, so basically the free threaded version completed this work in 24 seconds compared to 90 something seconds. So it was 4 times faster. And what was happening is all of the cores on this machine were being used simultaneously and in parallel, whereas the non-free threaded version was only using a single core on the machine. So the big benefit of the free threaded version is the improved throughput and improved utilization of your machine. And the free threaded version has been in beta test now for several months, and we're getting very close now to releasing it. So the next thing on our roadmap is a 64-bit version of the alpha servers, both classic server and IIS. And then once we've done that, we're going to work on a Linux version of the server. The reason that a Linux version is important for us is that Linux machines in the cloud are much less expensive than Windows machines. So that'll bring the cost of hosting your applications down. We're also going to start releasing patches to the stable release of the build. So the reason that that's important is that we've noticed that many developers are reluctant to upgrade to the latest version of alpha. even when they report a bug and we say it's been fixed in the nightly build, they're reluctant to upgrade to the nightly build or to the next stable release because new bugs have been introduced. So by being able to patch the stable release, the odds of us breaking something are much lower. And I think this is going to be an important change for developers by being able to get fixes to the stable release. So along that same lines, we're adding integrated testing into the product. So what we mean by that is we're going to add the ability to record tests and play those tests back. So when a new version of Alpha comes out, you can play your tests back to see whether the new version has broken anything or not. So I'll be demoing the integrated testing feature through a walkthrough of some screenshots in a few moments. Then we're continuing to add new features to the list control, and we're adding something called an action bar, and we're also adding QBE, which the grid component has had for some time. So I'm going to be demoing action bars and QBEs because they're going to be coming out in the nightly build very shortly, probably in the next day or two. And then finally, we're going to be working on the UX component, the ability to improve the save time and the pre-render time. So currently, right now, in the UX component, when a user builds a large component, maybe several hundred controls, when they save that component, it can take quite a long time to render it, to do the pre-render. So what we're working on is an ability to pre-render and save the changes that you make incrementally. So we'd like that to speed up the ability to save your components much more quickly than they have been in the past. So let's move on right now and talk about the list control, action bar, and QBE, and then we'll talk about, if there's time, about the screenshots for integrated testing. So we're going to go back now to the list control, to Alpha, sorry. And I'm going to create a new component here. I'll add a new list, and I'll choose single option, and I'll say create list from template, and I'll choose my template. I'll choose the customer template over here. So I'll save that over there. And now what I'm going to do, let's just get rid of that button there temporarily. And I'm going to go now to this list and configure it a little bit differently. I'm going to go to the list properties, and I'm going to turn off has action bar, and then I'm going to go to turn on allow in-place editing, and then I'm going to go here and I'm going to add in in-place editing icons. And now I'd like to save this as a template, so I'm going to go here and save settings, and I'll say demo. So now I've saved this as a template. So now I'm going to go OK. And I'm going to delete this component, this list here, and add a new list in again. So I'll go there and choose list. And this time I'm going to choose a template, but the template that I want to use is demo. So if I bring this up now, I'll see that all the choices that I previously saved have been rendered there. So there's my list control. You can see that I don't have the in-place editing icons there, which I should have had. So I'll look at that. And so let's go now and run this. So there's my list control. So I'm going to basically now go and turn on the action bar. So in order to, first of all, I'm going to go, so let's go here to the list control here. Go to list properties, and then I'll turn on the action bar. And I'll configure the action bar to have a refresh button, an export button, and a search button. And I'll also specify that there are custom buttons, and I'll go define the custom buttons. And then we can, if we want, we can also have list detail view buttons, which I'm going to turn off right now. I don't want list detail view buttons. So let's go now and define some custom buttons. So we'll go here to this button definition, and I'll say add button 1. And we'll say that the button layout is image only, and we'll go and choose our image. Oh, this is the sub theme, sorry. So I won't choose a sub theme. I'll choose an icon. Yeah, I'll choose the button image. So I'll choose that as my image. And then for my JavaScript, when the user clicks on that button, I'll just say alert hello. So I'll go there and save that. So I've added one custom button right now, and I've also said that the action bar should be displayed above the header. I can also display it below the header as well, or I can display it relative to the footer either. So this would be at the bottom of the list. So I'm going to go there, and now what I can do also is I can say that this action bar that I've just defined is going to be the default action bar for all new list controls that I create. So even if I don't go through the process of configuring an action bar for a list, it's going to have a default action bar that I'm going to save right now. So whatever I've just defined is now my default action bar. So I'll go ahead now and pick this, save this, and then run it. So you can see there's my action bar over there, and there's my custom button, which displays hello. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this list, and I'm going to say that the list should not be rendered until it's refreshed. So I go to list properties, and I'll say delay render until explicit refresh. So now when I run this list, there should be no data now. And if I hit the refresh button, you see the list gets its data. So the reason that we added the action bar is that what we found is that when users add a list control to a UX component, they invariably add buttons that are used for refreshing the list, for exporting the list data, and for searching the list. So we built that in so that lists can always have those features. So now if I go here and delete this list, and I create a new list control. So let's go here and start from scratch, and we'll go here and we'll define, say, static data, and we'll go here and define some choices. Oh, we haven't selected columns, so we'll go there and choose some columns. And we can see that even though we didn't go into this list to configure the action bar, this list still has an action bar, and that's because we've defined the default action bar. But if we don't want this list to have an action bar, we can just go back to list properties here, and we can say that it does not have the default action bar. So we've turned that off now. So there we go. So now when we run this list, this component, we'll see that the list no longer has an action bar. So I'm going to go back now and create a list with the QBE feature. So I'll delete this over here. I'll say create a new list, and I'll choose a template. I'll choose the customer template. So now I'm going to go back into the list builder here and go to list properties, and I'm going to turn on the action bar. And I'm also going to turn on query by example, or QBE. and then I'm going to configure it, and I'm going to say that the initial state of this QBE should be closed, and that the template for the number of records found by a search should be records found and then the count and then the search type. So the search type is either client side or server side. So when you do a search and it's client side, the search is extremely fast because it's just being done through JavaScript. And so we do client side searching for all types of lists as long as client side searching is allowed. So client side searching is not allowed if the list is paginated, because the client is only displaying one page of data, not all the data. So in that case, you need to do a server-side search. So we'll demo that as well. So let's go ahead now and run this. So we just need to configure the action bar here. And we'll
Just
turn
for a
on.
time check, you've got about 5 minutes or so left.
5 minutes, Dave?
Yep.
Okay, that should be fine here. So
Excellent.
let's go ahead now and run this now. So I'm press this button to open up the QBE, and there's the QBE. So I'm going to go here and type in, say, London. And we can see that as I was typing, the search was done and it found 6 records. So it's hard to see them because the list is so small. But if I close the QBE down, let's go make this list a little bit higher. So I'll go here and say 6 inches. And I'll open up the QBE and I'll go here and I'll type in London, and there's the 6 records. If I clear my search, we go back to all the records in the list. So now what I'm going to do is go back to this list here and turn on pagination, which means that we now need to do server-side searching. So I'll go to pagination, and I'll just leave that as the default. So now when I run this, we'll see here that if I go here now, type in London. And the reason that I know that it's server side is because now all of a sudden there's a search button here. So we're not doing the search on a key up event. We're doing it when the user clicks the search button. So we've just done a search. We did a server side search. We found 6 records, and we can now clear those search criteria out there. So by default, a query by example uses an input control, but you can also specify that you want a drop-down control. And in the case of date fields, you can use a drop-down control that has special keywords like search for all records that match today, yesterday, this week, this year, this quarter, etc. So you can do searches that use friendly names. So that's what we have coming up for 2025. I guess I didn't have time to walk through the screenshots of the testing feature, but that will be coming out later this year
That is
or early
excellent.
next year. Thanks very much. So I think, Dave, we now want to move on to Bob, right?
We are going to move on to Bob next. If we don't get to questions in this session, we're going to have a question session later on in the afternoon. So just want to let people know that. So anyway, yeah, I believe Bob Moore, our VP of Mobility, is here. Bob, are you there on the line? You have to unmute, sorry. There we go.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, excellent. Should I go? I know you've prepared a video. Should I go ahead and play the video, or would you like to do a little intro for it?
Yeah, you can go ahead and play the video. I think after the video, there's a couple of things I'd like to say.
Great.
Just some comments I have on the video. But yeah, let it roll.
That sounds good. Let me go ahead and make myself the presenter. We will look at that video.
Hi, my name is Bob Moore. I am VP of Mobile Development here at Alpha Software, and today I'm going to show you something new that we've added to the PWA builder for progressive web apps, and that is the ability to prompt the user to install the app on the device or on the desktop. Now, this is really, really important because PWA apps, unless they are installed on iOS devices, don't really act like PWAs. For example, they can't do things like push notifications. And Apple doesn't make it easy. They don't prompt you to do that. So, with this new ability to prompt the user to add to the home screen is really, really beneficial, and will make sure that you get the most mileage that you can out of your PWAs. So we're going to start off by taking a look at I'll run the live preview on this. This is the Alpha Notes app that I did back in 2022. This is a really, really nice little PWA in that it uses Firestore for the back end, and it includes it's online and offline synchronization of data. There's actually no alpha server here used at all, and it gives you an idea of like how much power you've got in your hands here as a developer to leverage Firebase with alpha. So this is a really great example app, and this is available up on GitHub. And I've also got a number of videos that I've done back in let's see, it was Alpha DevCon 2022. I'll make sure that you have a link to all those videos that I did so you can see how this app was built. I go into great detail on that. And then I've got a follow-up video on how to debug PWAs that I did last year at DevCon 2023. That will be in the same list, so you'll be able to see all those videos. And this one I'll make sure to get in there as well. It's up on my Alpha YouTube channel. So this particular application here is running in live preview, right? And oh, I look at that complete video for Alpha Dev Days. That's right now we're doing that. So now we'll change the status over here to in process. And let's see, we'll go ahead and save that, right? So that's now done, and that would have been updated on any device that had this this application installed. Let's see if I can get that to come back over there. Let's see. Bear with me a second. Yeah, there we go. Reminder, this is in process. So that's the component itself. What I'm going to do now is you would come in to highlight the component that you want to turn into a PWA, and next click on PWA, create a progressive web application. So this is Alpha Notes. This description right here is used for the stores. So if you wanted to publish this to the Google Play Store or to the Microsoft Store, that would be used there. There are some additional properties that I'm going to be adding to this so that have been recently added to help you promote PWAs in the app stores. It can be a little tricky to get a PWA into the Apple Store. It is possible, and hopefully I'll do another video in the future that kind of shows you how you could possibly do that. But Apple, it makes it a little tricky. Now notice on this one, I've got an offline page here that I'm including, and but if you look at the Ajax callbacks, there aren't any. So everything's going on between the client and Firebase Firestore. We're using a service account for that. It works really, really well. But the new thing here is going to be right here, add to home screen dialog. And that's what we're going to be showing you today. So we've got that checked. We want to make sure that this PWA app, that the user's prompted to install this app. Okay. And so you've got some display options here. This says show screen display options. They can be either standalone or inline. And let's take a look at what that actually means. So I've got some pictures here I've done, and let me bring them both up and you'll be able to see them. So Let me just center this guy over here. So this right here is inline. So you can see install Hello World V2. That's the name of, that's what we called this one. Well, actually, that was the one I was testing before. It was called Hello World V2. That's ours here would be called Alpha Notes. Sorry, a bit confusing. But that was one of my test things, and that was the screen I captured. Okay, just so you could see the difference. And then this is the way it looks. Come on over here. There we go. Okay, this is the way it looks with standalone. So instead of it being all on that one line, it just says install app, and then your app name would be right here. So again, in this case, it would be Alpha Notes. So that's what you're controlling with this property right here. Now, max modal pop-up display count. You could prompt a user to install the application multiple times. So in this case, I've got up to 10. That would be really aggravating to do that. So really, you kind of really only want to prompt the guy once or twice to install it. That's just my own opinion. If they don't want to install it, then that's the way it is. But we definitely want to prompt at least once for them to install. Once we exceed this count, it won't come up again. And there's a reason to go for a low count here, and I'll explain it when I actually get into the demo of the application itself. Default browser locale. So this is an open source project up on GitHub, and it supports a bunch of different languages. So all of the prompts and the dialogues can be in all these different languages. And here's a long list of them, and it even includes different dialects of Chinese. But in this case, we'll say English. You can auto-detect the browser locale as well. And this is, so even if my default locale was English and somebody in Spain opened it up, it would adjust here to the Spanish language if you have this auto-detect browser locale checked. And again, your choice. Automatically launch the add to home screen dialog. Do you want to launch this thing when the guy loads the app? Do you want to prompt him right away to install to the home screen? If you can programmatically prompt them as well. So if, let's say you could have a button that says, oh, I want to install this, and then it would bring that dialog up and it would be the same thing, but you're programmatically doing it as opposed to here, we're going to automatically do it. So here we're going to use a delay. So we're going to do a 5,000 millisecond, so a 5-second delay once the app has come up on the device. And you can also set that for page views. So you could say, well, after, like in this case, after 5 page views, then show it. So it's your call on that. You can, once, twice, how many times you want. Now remember, so we've got this guy here set to only show it once, but you could say, well, show it after 3 page views. So that's, again, your call. You can adjust that as required. And then you have an option to show on mobile devices and to show on desktop browsers. Now, clearly you want to show it on mobile devices. And you might not want to show it on desktop browsers. I don't know, but you can. Certainly Chrome and Microsoft's Edge do very well with that. Firefox does not support installing PWAs, so you can't target that, and Opera doesn't either. But any of the Chrome or Edge browsers do a nice job with that. So you can certainly do that. And once you're done with that, let's see, we're not using push notifications on this one. Just go ahead and click on OK, and it's going to generate all the files you need for your progressive web app. Let's see, that's not important to me here because I'm not doing callbacks. And let's go take it all look at the files that we just generated. Here they are. These are all the files. Now, what I like to do when I'm building these projects out is I like to copy these files into a new project that's just very specific for, okay, this is my published PWA. That's the way I do it. You can do it any way you want, but it's just a procedure that I sort of like to use. So what I do is I would come in and typically I'd open this folder up here, copy those files, or I would have copied them from the previous page. So I would have gone in here, copy these files to the clipboard, and then paste them into a different project. That's the way I do it. You don't have to. You could publish right out of that PWA folder. It's just something that I prefer to do. So let's go ahead and we'll go to the project I created specifically for publishing the Alpha Notes PWA app, and it's right here. And I do that because I like to make sure that my project is set up the way I want. Project properties, my default page is index HTML. I like to make sure that I'm not including jQuery core, jQuery UI, all the different things that I need for this specific project. This is where I like to set them. So that's done. And so we're in good shape there. And then now what I'm going to do is we can do live test. So live test, we can use, in this case, the local server. We can use, we don't need to go to Alpha Cloud or anything because we're not using, because we're in live test, we can use the service worker. It will still work because it's on localhost. But typically for any PWAs, you want to be up on an HTTPS server. So I would use Alpha Cloud for that. But in this case, we'll just go ahead, do live tests, pick index, development server, and here we go. So go ahead and start that up. And because we've got localhost here, the PWA, well, let me make the size of that window different, sorry. Because we've got, I'm just sizing the window, so just bear with me here so that it fits. Yeah, make it a little smaller so it sort of goes like that. Okay, here we go. Now you notice nothing came up here, and the reason is because I've been testing this, so it just didn't come up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the development tools. So we'll launch Control-Shift-I will bring these up. And I'm going to do, now that will allow me to empty the cache here. So we'll just hold that button down, empty cache, and hard reload. And that will reload the application. And let's see. In 5 seconds, we should see something. And we don't. And the reason is, again, because I've done this before on this browser. And when we look in, I'll show you, this is important that I actually know this. When we look in our local storage, you'll see some keys over here. Now I add some keys. You'll see the Alpha ADHS app is installed key. That will get set when the app is installed only on Chrome or Edge. The other browsers don't support that, so I can't really tell if it's been installed. We'd like to see this. We'd like to see all browsers support this, but they don't. So Safari doesn't, and that's a problem on Apple's side of things. I also am storing the locale that was selected, and in this case, auto locale didn't register. But notice this one right here, ADHS, so add to home screen, modal display count is set to 1, right? And so in this case, because we only set it for 1, it's not going to come up again. So I'm going to just click on that value there, and we're going to edit the value, and we'll make it, say, 0. Or the other thing we could do is come over here, right-click on it, and you can just delete the key. So that's now gone. And now I come in and I hold this down, empty cache and hard reload, and now it should come up. And there we go. Okay, so this is our prompt to add this app to our home screen. And you'll notice over here that you've got this little icon as well to say install Alpha Notes, because it's a PWA and you can definitely do that. I'm going to just make this a little different here. Okay. And but here's your prompt to install it. Now this is the browser prompt, and so we just come up with a button and say, yeah, install it. So when you click on the install, This app is now going to get installed, and it's going to bring up another. This is the browser's permission saying, do you want to install this app? And you can't bypass that. So it's basically you have to ask twice, right? So, and if the guy cancels here, we don't really know that he canceled on most devices. We can tell that the app was installed on Chrome and on Edge. And we'll see that once I actually do the install here. So we'll do the install. And now we've got it. It came up in a different. This is the view it would come up with if we launch this right from the desktop. Here, let me just I'm resizing things so that I get it all to fit. Okay, there we go. And let's go take a look now over at our Alpha ADHS, add to home screen app installed, and you'll notice now it's true. So we know this guy's been installed. And let's go ahead and we'll just get rid of the debugger here right now. Resize this screen here. And we'll see when I close this out. And let's go ahead and close that out. You'll see I've got an icon here now on my desktop. And when I click on it, double click on that, there's my app. It's up and running. And, you just work with it as you need to. And we could then say, if you wanted to uninstall it, you can click over here and uninstall Alpha Notes, and it would uninstall, okay? But like for testing purposes, it would uninstall it, but that flag that's set for it's installed, that would still say true, because there is no event that fires in any browser when an app is uninstalled. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. So for example, let's uninstall it, right? And we'll delete all the data. Everything goes away. And there it goes. And now let's go ahead and bring the browser back up. Let's see. No, so I'll just go ahead and do live test again and say, okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, there we go. And again, let's bring up the debugger here. So more tools or Control-Shift-I, and here we go. And here we can see that, let's see, interesting. Alpha ADHS app installed is false. So I'm detecting that it has been removed. That's right. I do set it to true and false independently. So I am setting it to false. Let me just I'm curious here. I'm going to do an empty hard cache reload here. Yeah, set to false. But notice that this is set to 1. And remember, we only said only prompt one time. So again, in this case, let's just go ahead and delete that key, or we could set it to the number down to 0 or something, and then come over here and do a hard reload on it. And now we should get another prompt. There we go. And I could install it again, and that would be fine. All right, next, let's just copy this URL here. Copy that. And minimize that. And let's bring up Edge. And here's our Alpha Notes coming up in Edge. And again, I'm going to go ahead and look at our development tools just so I can see what's going on here. And let's see what we've got. Got an error there. Service worker is activated. Not sure what that is right there, but that'll probably clear up when we do a refresh. Again, I've been playing around with this, so we've got stuff in the cache and stuff in the service worker caches and so on. But if we go to application here and we go to local storage, we can see, okay, in this case, modal display count is 0, app is installed is null. Let me just refresh this because this will come back, I think, just with a refresh. Let's see what we've got here. I'll just wait. And there it is. So now in this case, let's go ahead and install it. And this is the way Edge handles this. It's a little different than Chrome. So use this site often. Install the app, which opens in a focus window, has quick access options like pin to taskbar, and syncs across multiple devices. So yes, install it. And then we have other options. Let me just, oh, sorry, I got to get this screen in the recording view so you can see it. And this would be here regardless of whether or not we had that showing. But here, so now Edge gives us some other options. You know, do you want to pin to the taskbar, pin to the start menu? Do you want to create a desktop shortcut? Yeah, so say do that. So allow. Okay, and all of that happens. And then another prompt comes up that I can't show you. Sorry, it's out of the recording thing that it says, you know, this has been added to your home screen and so on and so forth. And again, now we'll go ahead and minimize or close out Edge. We've got the app running here. And I'm going to close it out again, and I'm going to go ahead and just double click over here, and here we are running in Edge, our PWA running in Edge successfully. And it's installed. And again, to uninstall here, let's see. Let's see if we have pinned to more tools. Oh, maybe an app settings. I was just looking for the uninstall here. Oh, right here, uninstall. So that's how you do it in Edge. So Edge is different than Chrome. All right, so but that's nice to know. I mean, it does. You can see that it does a nice job. So if you do an app that you want to include into the Microsoft Store, you know, this works out quite well. Next, we'll take a look at it in a couple of mobile browsers. So we'll start out with Android. Okay, so to test this on numerous devices, iOS and Android devices, I'm going to publish it up to Alpha Cloud. That's just going to be easier for me. So I'm going to show you how I do that, just so you guys know how to do it. You can use this live test here and tell it you want to use Alpha Cloud. And let's see, we're going to go ahead and index is going to be our page that we're going to fire off. And we'll configure Alpha Cloud, and you can sign in. Here it's just loading up all the files. And it's go ahead and start the publishing process. I'll pause this until it's done, and then we'll go in and we'll look at the application on an Android device. Okay, so I published the app to Alpha Cloud, and here I'm running it on a emulator. I had a hard time projecting my Android device screen to my PC here. So here I'm just running it on an emulator. And this is what we see on an Android device here. Notice this add alpha notes to home screen. So they automatically are asking that in Android. Do you want to add it? And you could click yeah. So you don't actually even need this, right? So you can do either this or this. But in this case, notice the difference. We have this arrow pointing to this area. Click on this, and then we would say install app in this case. So install app. Yeah, we want to install it. And you would say touch and hold the widget to move it around on the home screen, or add to home screen. So here, add to home screen here. Then in this case, we'll exit out of that. And in this case, go back to the home screen. Oh, sorry. Going back further. And here we see our alpha notes added to the home screen on the Android device. So we get this indicator that it is a web app, so we can see the Chrome thing there. So if I'll go ahead and launch that, and then this is what it's going to look like when launched from the home screen on an Android device. And then from here, I'm going to show it. I will also show you this running on an iOS device. So bear with me and I'll show you that. I thought it best just to record these screens. Here you can see this is the install app on an iOS device. You can see the arrow here pointing down, and you'd have to click on that and add to home screen here. Once you do that, you're going to get this screen. Click add. Comes up on your home screen. The app is installed on the device, and here's the app running on the device. Well, I want to thank you all for your attention today. The ability to add a pop-up that prompts you to add to the home screen certainly on a mobile device is really critical and very critical for iOS. So this is a nice addition to the product. I have recorded a number of videos that are related to PWAs, and shown on the slide above is the URL, the location to go to view all of the videos that I've done over the last, this is 3 years. And they all build on each other. There's also very good information in there for you, so you might want to check that out. Thanks so much. Take care.
All right, and we're back. Thanks very much, Bob.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was awesome. We have a couple minutes for questions. We only got about 3 minutes or so, but if there are questions about this, I know someone asked whether or not you had the code from the example you did a couple years ago using Firestore, and if you'd be willing to share that, or any other components.
Yeah, that's up on GitHub actually. If it's not, I'll make sure that we get it there.
Yep.
I believe it is though. I'll have to look, and I'll have to supply you with that link, Dave. I'm off the top of my head, I don't know what it is.
That would be great. We'll put that onto the content portal page when we get those links. So that's where you're going to go back, and that's the URL that's shown on the screen. Yep.
You can go ahead and send that on. And then I'll also supply you with the URL that goes to my Alpha YouTube channel, which has just a list of all the PWA.
You've got the playlist, right? Exactly, that you showed right at the end of the video.
You did one as well, so we should probably include that in there.
Terrific.
So it's just one location where all of the PWA related videos are located.
Fantastic.
Makes it easy to get to. The one comment that I wanted to make was when I uninstalled the app and I uninstalled all of the data, that's how that flag got set, where it says the app isn't installed, because there is an event that fires there. So, but that was why, because I was a little confused why that happened, and then I said, oh, but I erased all the data. So, anyway, just to clarify.
Excellent. Well, we've come to the end of our time. We do have a pure Q&A session coming up later on today. You can take a look at that in the schedule. But Bob, I want to thank you, and I want to thank Selwyn very much for presenting. We are going to take a 45-minute break. We will be back here at 1 p.m. and we're going to talk about automated testing, not the one that's being built into Alpha, but more generic, and how we do testing here at Alpha. I think you'll find that interesting, and a lot more to come beyond that as well. See you then. Bye-bye.